Welcome to California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are in Sacramento, the state's capital. We are joined by Chris Holden. He is a member of the California State Assembly, also recently named Assistant Majority Leader. We congratulate you, sir.
Thank you, Brad.
I want to speak with you about the weather and how hot it has been throughout the entire year. In fact, the past 3 years we've been in drought. And with drought comes dry conditions, and with dry conditions comes fire.
Yes.
Are we at a high stage alert right now in terms of fire?
We're at high stage alert. We have seen more fires this year, so early in the season, 2,300 responses, 17,000 acres charred. And I think it's safe to say there is no more fire season.
Right.
That is, there are peaks and there are periods throughout the year where it will drop off a bit, but we have just not received any rain. The vegetation in the foothills is extremely dry, and it creates a real problem.
I remember coincidentally flying to Sacramento 8-9 months ago, I think it was, and the rim fire was going on. I think it was called the rim fire. Was that near Yosemite? Was that correct?
That's right. That's right.
I could see the fire from the plane. I mean, it was chilling to see my state, our state, in flames.
Yeah.
And the state was literally in flames.
It is happening more often, and we're seeing it in areas that are sometimes difficult to access.
Right.
CAL FIRE has made it very clear that in areas where there is population in the foothills, there are certain things that people can do to sort of protect their home and around their home, and so that's an important step.
And I think you represent Glendora, is that right? Is that part of your district or near your district?
It's near San Dimas.
Right, so was it called the Colby Fire?
It was a Colby fire.
That was also chilling not that long ago, where the fire was literally right up against homes.
It was right up against homes, but I will say that with the mutual aid agreements and fire departments working collaboratively together and CAL FIRE, the real goal at that point, once a wildfire has begun, is to preserve human life and personal property. And I think that they did a marvelous job in that instance, because only 5 structures were actually impacted. There were some injuries, but it was not nearly as bad as it could have been. And so we're seeing that the more we can do, and even in San Diego.
Right, I was going to mention the San Diego fire was also, I was in San Diego recently for a soccer tournament for my daughter, and drove by areas that were just black and charred. It's
amazing. But one of the things that they're saying too is that make sure that you clear off at least 200 feet around your home. And you can start to plant vegetation that's drought resistant, that's also succulent, if you will. And there were photos of homes that were taken after the fire, they were still standing, and right next door, the home was burned down on both sides.
Do we know, was there a theme? Was there a pattern?
Yeah, they either cleared around their home properly, or there were vegetation that really helped in terms of preserving the integrity and not having dry fuel so close to the property.
There is some good news, one could argue. Additional funds have been dedicated toward fighting fires, both through additional firefighting capabilities as well as monies to the California Conservation Corps. Local firefighting agencies are getting grants. Important to you, sir?
Very important. I think that we've seen, as I said before, we've seen some early warnings that this is going to be the hottest, driest, and most potentially flammable season that we've seen in many, many years. And to have the governor and the legislature vote to put additional monies into the budget to help with firefighting capabilities, but also to help with neighbors clearing out brush and to put in the kind of vegetation that
When we come back, I want to talk more about the budget that recently passed. For our viewers on HLN, I want to thank you so much for joining us. For our other viewers, we'll be right back with Assemblyman Chris Holden. So, sir, let's talk about the budget, an on-time budget, which I know
4 years in a row.
Which I know is a source of pride for members of the legislature.
Yes.
Over $7 billion more this year, this fiscal year, than last.
Yes.
What went right? How is it that we have an additional $7 billion?
Well, the economy is continuing to do well, and I think that when you see the economy doing better and making sure that we're not putting money into the types of programs that are sustaining long term, I think we worked off of budget reserves from last year, and so I think that the governor and the legislature has been very prudent of how to go forward in the last few budget cycles to make sure that we were steady and on our feet, and we're starting to see that we're coming out of the worst days. But having said that, we still want to be prudent. We make sure that we have a rainy day fund.
Can I ask you about that?
By all means.
Because there's no question that that has been a focal point for Democrats and Republicans and the governor,
Yes.
that there be a functioning rainy day fund. We've had rainy day funds in our lifetimes, a
Yes.
few of them actually,
Right.
and some as recently as 10 years ago
Right.
that did not function. They were just completely dysfunctional.
Right.
There will be a measure on the ballot, I understand, that will create yet another rainy day fund. Sir,
Right.
convince me that this will be a functional rainy day fund.
Well, I think it's very safe to say that this governor and the legislature are taking the state of our economy very serious. We will have another downturn at some point in the future. I think that it goes without saying that we want to prepare for the worst of times. We want to recognize that when things are good and strong and the economy is healthy, that we're able to put money away because there will be a downturn at some point.
But that being said, if I may, we've put money away before. With Prop 58, we put money away. That was passed in 2004, but yet it got drained quickly.
Right.
Does this rainy day fund create backstops so the money is not, maybe we needed to access it back then, but so not easily accessed or enough money's put in there so it's longer lasting?
Yeah, I think that's really the key, and I think having the voters have an opportunity to sign off on it, I think, is another important step to ensure that the money is going to be for defined needs in the future at such point that we find ourselves in need of having to protect the general fund and programs that are already established from immediate cuts mid-budget cycle.
Right.
And so I think it's really important that we have these type of procedures in place and that we recognize and honor them. These are agreements that we are making with the voters of the state, and I think it's a very smart way to govern. We're investing dollars in very important programs and initiatives that have gone without investment for so many years, and certainly education is right at the top of that. And in order for the state to truly be golden again, these are the kind of expenditures we have to make.
I want to talk, if I may, about our court system. I
Yes.
used to be a practicing lawyer, so I used to appear in court. That's a whole other conversation. And I've heard some statements from the Chief Justice of our state, Chief Justice Sakui, and it has been a little troubling. She has said that she believes that because of a funding crisis, that we are on the verge of a civil rights crisis. We know the courts have been cut over $1 billion during this recent downturn. I know there's some restoration of funding. Some would argue that's not enough. Some would say it's a good first step. Where do you come down on this question of courts, which are so often forgotten?
Right. No, it is woefully low than what it should be. But for so many years, there have been cuts, so it was going the other way. Reorganizations, consolidations, and certainly the courts were put in a position where they had to figure out how to survive, and they did. But it has really created a real impediment to the efficiency of the judicial system. And when you have courts consolidating and people, especially out in areas where they have to drive 100 miles to get to a court.
Right, not far from your district, just a little, I know, because you represent parts of the Inland Empire on
Right.
the edge, but if you go farther into the Inland Empire, they may not have a court within 3 hours because of consolidations you mentioned.
That's right, and even in the more urban communities where there are a few more courts close by, there still is the issue of trying to get to a court date.
Right.
You have backlog, you have lines that are extended out the building, and so that's just not right. It doesn't put anyone in the best position to have the judicial system work for their best interests.
Are we on the other side, though, of this crisis? I think there was a bump of about $233 million in the budget, although I understand the Chief Justice was looking for more like $600 million
Right.
of a bump.
Yeah, the Chief Justice is doing what she and any Chief Justice should do, and that's advocate for the courts and be a fierce advocate for the courts. I think what it is doing is setting the bar where it needs to be for the legislature to continue to reach towards.
Right.
And as years go forward, we're going to continue to reach there until we get to where she wants us to.
Exactly. His name is Chris Holden. He is a member of the California State Assembly. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's California Edition.